when Mayor Pete Buttigieg took the position as transportation secretary, he thought he would have the easiest job in the world, where he could just sit back, put his feet up, eat some Cheetos, drink some wine, and use this as a launching pad for his next presidential run. He thought it'd be a cushy job. He wouldn't have to do anything. But the fact of the matter is there's actually a lot of power and responsibility for the transportation secretary. And of course, we've seen terrible airline failures under his leadership. And by the way, he was given a roadmap by Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna on how to fix the problem with the airlines, and he just didn't do it. He snuggled up to the industry, lets them get away with whatever the hell they want to get away with. And now there's a political backlash as a result of that. But now it got even worse. Why? Because we saw what happened in East Palestine, Ohio, with a train derailment with toxic chemicals. Then there was a massive chemical fire. And Pete Buttigieg said Dickie McGeezacks about that for days, son. So we were already 2 days, 3 days past the incident. It was huge on social media. Local news was covering it. It was getting some national news, not nearly enough, by the way. But our transportation secretary, when there's an emergency as it pertains to transportation, was nowhere to be found. So he comes out. Again, this is a couple days after the incident. And he's at this event. And he didn't say a word about the train derailment and the chemical fire and an entire Ohio town being poisoned and how water is now threatened as a result of this highly toxic, poisonous chemical, or I should say chemicals. But he did have time to make this argument while this disaster was unfolding. I love this.
To work with your contractors, to work with your community colleges on building a workforce that reflects the community. We have heard way too many stories from generations past of infrastructure where you got a neighborhood, often a neighborhood of color, that finally sees the project come to them, but everyone in the hard hats on that project looking like, doing the good paying jobs, don't look like they came from anywhere near the neighborhood.
Right.
You can build community wealth that will help close wealth gaps in this country if we can tear down those barriers. But that happens at the delivery level.
So nothing to say about one of the worst transportation disasters in American history, but he has time to lecture that there are too many white people in construction and that we need to embrace diversity more. Wow. All right, more. So a couple days later, he comes out and he says the following. I continue to be concerned about the impacts of the February 3rd train. Okay. Look when this statement is. February 13th. He says, I continue to be concerned about the impact of the February 3rd train derailment near East Palestine, Ohio, and the effects on families in the 10 days since their lives were upended through no fault of their own. It's important that families have access to useful and accurate information. USDOT, that's the United States Department of Transportation, has been supporting the investigation led by the National Transportation Safety Board. Our Federal Rail Administration and pipelines and hazardous materials teams were on site within hours of the initial incident and continue to be actively engaged. We will look to these investigation results and, based on them, use all relevant authorities to ensure accountability and continue to support safety. In the meantime, our federal partners at the EPA are on site and monitoring indoor and outdoor air quality to test for VOCs and other chemicals of concern. EPA has screened 291 homes and no detections were identified. And 181 homes remain. To request screening, call 330 blah blah blah. For more information, visit an EPA website. So let me explain what this is. This is what's called gaslighting. Are you going to say anything about the endless videos on social media of dead fish in streams and creeks? Are you going to say anything about that? Are you going to address the fact that all different kinds of wildlife are just dropping dead? Some guy with his foxes, he told a story. They went really quickly. There was a terrible article about a woman with her cat. Soon as this thing happened, Cat was having breathing problems, had to go to the vet, got stuck with like an $18,000 bill. The cat died anyway. Are you going to say anything about, hey, we're seeing immediate impacts on wildlife right now. This stuff is poisonous to human beings. We could be looking at a situation like it was with 9/11, where people who were there, who were first responders, who breathed in that particulate matter, that manifested in 5 years, 10 years. Are we going to see the exact same thing happen when it comes to East Palestine, Ohio, and the surrounding places? They did an evacuation order for like 7.5 minutes, and they were like, okay, you're good, go back. It reminds me of Obama gaslighting everybody drinking the water from Flint, Michigan, as it was still poisoned. Everybody, it's okay, everybody. The water is okay now. Here, I will drink it to show you. I swear this is not Aquafina. I promise. From your president. So there's a roadmap that's followed every single time something like this happens, which is an accident happens. It is a true catastrophe and disaster. It's a health emergency. What happens is the company steps in and goes, whoa, nothing to see here, bro. Nothing to see here. Yeah, there was a derailment because we didn't want any regulations, and there's a colossal chemical fire, which is poisoning everything in sight, and there's evidence of the poisoning of everything in sight. But don't worry, everything's okay. We're handling it. We're on top of it. It's cool, bro. It's cool, bro. Don't even worry, bro. And then the politicians are lazy and clueless, and they just listen to the company that's trying to quell fears because they care about quelling fears for their bottom line, their reputation, profit. And so the politicians just repeat that line over and over. And then eventually, over time, the truth comes out. The truth comes out. And you realize, oh shit, this was super duper serious. This happened with Chernobyl. This happened with 3 Mile Island. This happens with it happened with COVID. Downplay. Oh shit, we can't downplay anymore. And, then the whole game is up. Let me explain to you exactly how corruption got us to this point. Corruption led directly to this happening. This company trying to squeeze every single penny out of their business model led to this. So shout out to Lever News and David Sirota. He's going to explain the specifics of the regulations that were ignored and axed on behalf of industry. Here we go.
We just saw in the middle of the country a giant chemical fireball, 100-foot flames, and very few people asking questions about what led up to this. So there was a derailment in 2012 in New Jersey,
releasing 20,000 gallons of dangerous chemicals and noxious gas into the air.
There's children in the town that are being affected by this.
And there was pressure on regulators to do something about those kinds of trains. And so the Obama administration had a rule proposed to better regulate these trains. The National Transportation Safety Board told the regulatory agency, said, listen, these regulations should broadly cover not just oil, they should cover what's known as Class 2 chemicals. And the chemical industry lobbyists went to work pressuring the regulatory agency to limit the definition of what a high hazard flammable train is. Limit it in a way that the train in Ohio, that kind of train ended up not being classified as a high hazard flammable train.
The NTSB closely monitoring 4 cars that are filled with vinyl chloride. It has been found to be linked to cancer.
Trains that were subject to this rule were going to be required to use a special kind of new braking system to try to deter or at least reduce the damage from derailments.
ECP delivers the unmatched performance of air brakes with the precision of electronic communications.
Most trains in the country are still using technology from the Civil War era. But the moment the government was considering making it a mandate, the railroad industry's changed its tune. It cited cost concerns to pressure against that rule.
We want to see federal regulations when they're necessary, not just in reaction to a headline in the Washington Post.
Obama's rule included that measure to expand the larger use of those brakes on the nation's rail system. But in that 2016 election year, the Republican Party got about $6 million from the rail industry. And Senate Republicans started beating the drum for Trump to repeal the rule. Donald Trump repealed the brake rule so that the industry does not have to even start to use these kinds of brakes. One former Federal Railroad Administration regulator regulators told us that these brakes, which are known as ECP brakes, would have mitigated a disaster like this. And we just learned today, after the publication of our story, federal officials told us that this train did not have those brakes on the train.
I need somebody to explain to me why the railroad shouldn't be nationalized immediately. I need somebody to explain that to me. Because from my perspective, it appears like a no-brainer. You have this industry that cares so deeply about profit, they will insist on using Civil War-era brakes. These are the exact brakes that led to the problem. I mean, the train was sparking and on fire 20 miles before the explosion happened, and we caught it on video. They also want literally one person in each train. It used to be way more. Then now they're down to 2. Now they want 1. They fired massive numbers of people. And again, it's because they're trying to squeeze every single penny out of this. Tell me why this shouldn't be nationalized. Why should we have the executives at these companies go to the government and say, we don't want these new brakes. We don't want these new regulations that force us to have these safer brakes. I don't care what you want. Why would I care what you want? If we listen to you, stuff like this ends up happening. By the way, since this happened, there's been 2 more train derailments. Now, thankfully, at least as of this recording, it hasn't led to a giant chemical fire, but there's been 2 more train derailments since this happened. By the way, Biden, Democrats, remember when you forced the railroad workers to accept a deal that they didn't want to accept? Remember that? Remember that? One of the things they were asking for was more paid time off. They wanted like a week or 2 paid time off by law. And Biden was like, no, I'm going to side with the rail bosses and go against you. This is unacceptable, man. This is crazy. The profit motive is ruining many, many industries. It's a race to the bottom. It's worse quality, no safety regulations. This is a clear example of why regulations are absolutely necessary. But honestly, in this instance, I look at it and I'm like, just nationalize them. Nationalize this entire industry. Why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we? We can then make rules that are actually reasonable because we're not caring about squeezing every shiny red penny out of the system. By the way, anybody who's talking about this and is not bringing up the obvious solutions, increased regulations or nationalization or both, don't listen to them. They're frauds, right? Anybody could point a finger at something bad and go, bad. Okay, what's the actual solution? What's the solution? Well, I'm telling you what the solution is. Because there have been a lot of people on the right, trying to use this to their own ends. And it's like, you guys support the policies that led exactly to this position. Marjorie Taylor Greene was virtue signaling about this. As, look what happened. A big disaster here. Why aren't we focusing more on this? You brought about the situation which allowed this. You fostered this. You brought this into existence. Your policies lead to this all over the country. Now, if you want to prove me wrong and come out in favor of nationalization or massively increased regulations, be my guest. I'd love to be wrong on it, but I'm not wrong on it. So anyway, again, massive shout out to David Sirota here. Great work for Lever News. And we have, by the way, Biden hasn't said Dickie McGeezax about this. Nothing. But Biden's nowhere to be seen. He's napping. He's napping and watching reruns of the Brady Bunch. Great. This is wonderful. Good stuff. Good stuff. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.